Hollywood is mourning a massive loss today as Michael Landon has passed away following a brutal and unwinnable fight against aggressive liver and pancreatic cancer. The 54-year-old legend, best known for lighting up screens in Little House on the Prairie and Bonanza, took his final breath this afternoon at his private estate in Malibu, California. Whenever a Hollywood heir decides to finally speak up, the whole world stops to listen. And that is exactly what happened when Michael Landon's daughter decided it was time to break her silence. What she revealed completely shatters the picture-perfect image people have held onto for years, sparking a wave of shock and intense curiosity among his loyal fan base. It really begs the question, how much do we actually know about what goes on behind the closed doors of our favourite stars? Her emotional and startling admissions provide a window into the life of a man the world adored, yet only ever really knew, from a safe distance until this very moment. Stick around as we peel back the layers of her powerful statement and explore how these new details might reshape the legacy of Michael Landon forever. The shocking first details and how the world is reacting. Leslie Landon stepped into the spotlight recently, dropping comments that caught a lot of die-hard fans completely off guard. Her choice to open up the family album, so to speak, has sparked a wildfire of conversation. For literally decades, Landon wasn't just an actor. He was the ultimate symbol of the wholesome American father figure. However, Leslie's words suggest there was a much more complicated, perhaps darker reality lurking behind that warm, familiar smile. She didn't air every single piece of dirty laundry, but the core of her message made it crystal clear that huge chunks of Landon's life were carefully shielded from the cameras. In her interviews, she painted a picture of a dad who was incredibly loving, sure, but who also wrestled with some serious personal demons and challenges. This raw portrayal stands in stark contrast to the saint-like, flawless character he played on hits like Little House on the Prairie. Her honesty forces us all to confront the massive gap that often exists between a celebrity's polished public persona and who they actually are when the director yells cut. The internet is currently blowing up with responses swinging wildly from heartbreaking messages of support to total shock and disbelief. A huge number of fans are applauding her for keeping it real, feeling that knowing his flaws actually makes Michael Landon feel more human and less like a cardboard cutout. The specific timing of when she chose to speak out also carries a lot of weight in this saga. It has been decades since Landon left us back in 1991, and it seems Leslie finally found the emotional space to view things clearly. That distance gave her the ability to look back without anger, finding a delicate balance between honouring her dad's memory and being honest about the reality. You can tell she is coming from a place of healing rather than trying to throw mud, which is a refreshing change for people used to nasty celebrity tell-alls. Crucially, she stayed away from cheap sensationalism. Instead of just looking for a scandal, she focused on the emotional nuance and the very human struggles her father faced. She wasn't trying to tear down his career or achievements. She just wanted to prove he was more than the perfect angel we saw on TV every week. This mature approach has sparked deep, thoughtful conversations among fans rather than just fueling cheap tabloid controversy. It serves as a stark reminder that even our most beloved icons are carrying heavy private burdens we know nothing about. Naturally, the fallout from these revelations has been a bit of a mixed bag across the board. Some die-hard fans who have idolised him for years are having a really hard time reconciling these new truths with their memories. On the flip side, people are recognising her courage, knowing how incredibly tough it is to shatter the illusion of a famous parent. The narrative she shared proves that family dynamics are always messier and more intricate than the simple stories we get sold by Hollywood. Journalists and biography enthusiasts have reignited their interest, combing through old interviews and clips to see if they missed the signs back then. Deep dives into the archives seem to back her up, showing a man who had plenty of resilience but was definitely fighting his own battles. The picture forming now is of a guy trying to juggle the insane pressure of being a top-tier star while keeping a family afloat and managing his own emotional turbulence. These discoveries have fundamentally shifted the way we talk about the actor today. We are starting to see Michael Landon as a flesh and blood human being rather than just viewing him through rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia. His daughter's voice gave us the key to a deeper understanding, one grounded in empathy and the messy, complex truth of real life. As interest spikes, the difference between the TV star we knew and the father Leslie remembers is setting the stage for a totally new examination of his life story. The carefully crafted public image of Michael Landon. You have to remember, for 30 years, Michael Landon was basically the definition of wholesome American television. His leading roles in juggernauts like Bonanza and Little House on the Prairie cemented him as the ultimate dad and hero for millions of people. On screen, the guy just radiated warmth, morality and kindness, becoming the poster child for family-friendly entertainment. These weren't just gigs. They built an image so powerful that people truly believed he was the living embodiment of the values he preached on TV. His reputation as a gentle, perfect family man was so ironclad that it completely coloured how everyone viewed his life off the set. But behind that smiling exterior was a fiercely dedicated professional who knew exactly how to build and protect his brand. Landon was a master at understanding the medium of television, and he used his platform with incredibly calculated intention. He wasn't just an actor showing up to say lines. He was a powerhouse writer, director and producer who personally shaped the narratives America watched every night. He wasn't just an actor. He was the ultimate symbol of wholesome American values, curating a portfolio of projects that cemented his status as the nation's favourite father figure. That unwavering dedication kept him perched high on a pedestal, securing his legacy as one of the most trusted and adored icons to ever grace the small screen. But let's be real, Hollywood perfection is rarely what it seems, and beneath that polished, smiling exterior lay a labyrinth of complexities that the cameras never captured. His journey wasn't just a straight shot to stardom. It was paved with frantic reinvention and career-defining struggles, mirroring the crushing weight that comes with being a household name. The man was fighting battles on all fronts, from heartbreaking personal losses to a devastating diagnosis of pancreatic cancer later in life that truly put his famous resilience to the ultimate test. Yet the feel-good vibes of his television shows conveniently overshadowed these dark clouds, masking the private hell he was sometimes living through while the world watched him save the day on screen. Consequently, the adoring public remained blissfully ignorant of his true vulnerabilities, knowing only the carefully curated snippets he chose to sprinkle into magazine interviews. It created a fascinating duality where the saintly figure beloved by millions was a completely different entity from the complicated man navigating life behind closed doors. Landon was a master at compartmentalizing, building a fortress around his private life to shield his family from the blinding, often destructive glare of the Hollywood spotlight. Every word he spoke in public was calculated as he prioritized crafting an immaculate legacy over spilling the messy, raw truths of his actual existence. While you can't blame him for wanting privacy, this guarded approach fed into a mythology that effectively erased the flawed human elements of his story, turning him into more of a statue than a man. Fans were addicted to the warmth and unshakable stability he projected, so much so that they rarely stopped to question who the real person was behind that iconic, reassuring smile. You have to remember, the television era he dominated demanded high moral standards and idealistic storytelling, and he played the game better than anyone else. Landon didn't just act the part. He embodied these righteous values with a ferocity and dedication that made audiences believe he was the character he played. In a time of shifting cultural tides and uncertainty, he positioned himself as the ultimate comfort blanket, a steady hand that viewers could rely on week after week. His body of work essentially offered audiences a double-edged promise that kept them coming back for more. It was a perfect cocktail of high-quality entertainment mixed with a masterclass in ideal family dynamics and community spirit that everyone aspired to. He threw himself into these roles with such intensity and genuine commitment that he forged an unbreakable emotional bond, with viewers blurring the line between fiction and reality. However, whispers from industry insiders and early observers hinted that upholding this saintly ideal was a massive struggle, revealing the cracks caused by the immense pressure he was under. These reports painted a picture of a workaholic balancing a delicate high-wire act between his creative control freak tendencies and his massive obligations to his family. Those who worked alongside him on set often pointed out two dominant defining traits that fueled his rise to the top. We're talking about an obsessive perfectionism and an unstoppable driving force qualities that made him a star but wreaked absolute havoc on his personal relationships. The guy flashing that friendly, reassuring grin on your TV set was secretly wrestling with a mountain of emotional challenges that the script never called for. He was constantly navigating a minefield of complex situations trying to keep the show on the road, while his internal world was anything but simple. These private emotional turmoils remained buried deep until his daughter finally found her voice stepping forward to peel back the layers and make sense of the chaos. It's worth noting that his rigid moral stances weren't just for the cameras. They extended far beyond his acting gigs and into his real-world persona. Whenever he sat down with the press, Landon would preach about his values and life lessons, using the media to reinforce the gospel of Michael Landon. To the millions watching at home, he was a sage who possessed a profound, almost spiritual understanding of forgiveness, redemption, and faith. These deeply held beliefs were the steering wheel for his entire life, dictating everything from his professional moves to how he handled his personal relationships. Yet the general public was fed a very specific diet of details regarding his family life, knowing only what he wanted them to know. It wasn't until his daughter started speaking out that a light was shined on this hidden dimension, revealing that shared beliefs often coexisted with deep-seated difficulties and family trauma. The wholesome imagery he cultivated created an indelible mark on pop culture, permanently shaping how multiple generations would remember the legend of Michael Landon. This carefully constructed narrative provided the framework for all public discussions about him, effectively controlling the conversation from the grave. This ironclad image made it almost impossible for fans to believe any scandalous stories that dared to contradict the established saintly lore. So when his daughter began spilling the tea and sharing her side of the story, it challenged that long-standing golden glow and forced everyone to reconsider who Pa Ingalls really was. This shocking realisation forces us to take a much closer, unvarnished look at the family life that existed miles away from the cameras and scripts, where the messy realities of parenthood actually played out. The real drama wasn't on the prairie, it was the complex family dynamics playing out behind the scenes in the Landon household. Behind the massive television success lay a family world that, while certainly full of love, was a pressure cooker of complexities and unique challenges that would test anyone. Let's look at the numbers. Landon walked down the aisle 3 separate times and fathered a total of 9 children, which is a production in itself. Trying to blend a family of that magnitude wasn't just a challenge. It required the kind of careful navigation and diplomacy that usually is reserved for running a small country. Juggling those fragile personal relationships while managing the insane demands of a high-profile Hollywood career demanded massive sacrifices and constant adjustments from everyone in his orbit. Even though love was the central theme, underlying tensions and quiet struggles were the invisible forces shaping the family's daily existence. These volatile dynamics were kept strictly out of the public eye, eventually giving rise to rampant speculation and paving the way for his daughter's candid bombshell reflections years later. Within the walls of his estate, Landon was known as a fiercely devoted father who cared deeply about his children's well-being, even if his methods were intense. He fought to carve out time for them whenever humanly possible, staying heavily involved in many aspects of their upbringing despite his grueling shooting schedule. However, the brutal reality of his superstardom meant that professional duties frequently dragged him away, creating massive, unavoidable voids in his schedule. The unrelenting nature of show business demanded 18-hour days on set and constant jet-setting, a toxic cocktail that severely tested the strength of their family bonds. His daughter dropped some bombshells years later that confirmed this harsh truth, emphasising just how much damage that distance did to their personal connections. Trying to walk the tightrope between being a global television icon and a present, attentive father was a nearly impossible act to pull off. Landon fought tooth and nail to build a fortress around his brood to shield them from the blinding paparazzi flashbulbs, desperate to keep his private life truly off limits. Unfortunately, constructing those walls sometimes meant establishing rigid boundaries that inadvertently created a deep emotional chasm within the home. His daughter has hinted at painful moments where the closeness felt incredibly one-sided, adding a complicated layer to the perfect TV dad image the world worshipped. It is crucial to see these incidents for what they are, pieces of a classic, somewhat tragic narrative that plays out behind the closed doors of Hollywood mansions. That is not to say it was all gloom. The clan absolutely experienced golden moments of genuine joy and unity that Landon treasured more than his ratings. Whether it was lavish holidays, family vacations, or just hanging out in the backyard, Landon poured his heart into making those fleeting times count for something. Those cherished memories are essential pieces of the puzzle when you're trying to understand the messy, beautiful tapestry of their life together. Even when the drama was high, those flashes of joyful connection often served as the emotional glue that held the family together through the storms. The apple didn't fall far from the tree for some, as several family members chased the spotlight to keep the massive legacy Landon built alive and kicking. Stepping into the family business added a whole new level of complexity and drama to the already intricate family dynamic. The daughter's perspective reveals that while carrying the torch brought pride, it also came with a crushing weight of pressure and sky-high expectations. Walking that path meant constantly battling to find a middle ground between chasing personal dreams and staying loyal to the family brand. These delicate balancing acts add so much drama and depth to the family portrait. And we cannot forget the mothers who played a massive role too. Landon's multiple trips down the aisle introduced shifting dynamics and totally changed the flavour of the children's upbringing depending on who was in charge. These changing romantic relationships drastically altered the emotional temperature of the house and shaped how the kids viewed their famous father. If you listen closely, the daughter's reflections subtly drop breadcrumbs about how these factors influenced everything behind the scenes. Essentially, she is exposing the tangled, complicated web of feelings and alliances that existed behind the polished celebrity smile we all saw. Their family experience was riddled with mental and emotional health struggles, topics that people in Landon's era simply swept under the rug. Public awareness about these issues has exploded by 2026, meaning we now look back at those old behaviours with a totally different, more understanding lens. His daughter's willingness to speak out lately is finally shedding light on this crucial, yet often ignored part of their history. This new perspective fosters real understanding, encouraging us to react with empathy for their situation rather than just judging them from afar. Landon's punishing work schedule created a constant state of war between his obligations to the studio and his duties as a husband and father. It is a textbook example of the internal conflict that tears famous people apart when they try to have it all. Anyone addicted to the climb of professional advancement will eventually find their personal relationships withering on the vine, no matter how much love is actually there. His daughter's voice gives life to the pain caused by the pressures of living in a fishbowl, connecting his massive fame directly to the sacrifices made at the dinner table. Michael Landon commanded respect and adoration from millions through his heroic roles and his dignified public persona. But once the cameras stopped rolling, his family life was a chaotic mix of deep love, serious challenges, and painful growth. The way this story exposes his humanity makes him relatable to anyone dealing with family drama, even if they don't have the millions of dollars. These uncomfortable personal truths open the door to a bigger conversation about the insane pressure cookers these stars lived in. And let's be real, those pressures were magnified 1,000 times by the toxic, all-consuming world of Hollywood that surrounded him. Parenting in Tinseltown is a nightmare. Trying to raise grounded kids while navigating the shark tank of Hollywood is a struggle regular folks can't even imagine. For Michael Landon, the heat was turned up to 11 as his star power exploded, making it impossible to escape the demands. He was crushed under the weight of expectations, having to perform as the perfect entertainer for the world and the perfect dad for his house. Grueling hours on set, living out of a suitcase, and the prying eyes of the public created massive roadblocks to a normal family rhythm. Despite wanting to be there, Landon was stuck juggling flaming torches, trying to keep a blockbuster career afloat while not missing his kids' milestones. This desperate balancing act is the dirty little secret behind his success, a struggle shared by almost every parent who hits it big in the industry. The unpredictable nature of Hollywood has zero respect for schedules, forcing stars into chaotic routines that bleed stress right into their living rooms. Landon's reign spanned decades of time, during which he had to constantly shapeshift and reinvent his image to stay relevant. Whether he was the leading man in front of the camera or calling the shots as a producer, the grind never stopped for a second. That kind of relentless hustle meant that even the most devoted father would find himself physically or emotionally absent more often than not. Leslie has hinted that those empty chairs at the table left emotional scars that lingered, despite knowing her father truly loved them deep down. It is the ultimate heartbreaking irony of Hollywood parenting. A star can be worshipped by millions of strangers across the globe, yet remain completely out of reach for the people living under their own roof. To make matters even more complicated, the desperate need to shield innocent children from the toxic pitfalls of fame adds a massive layer of stress to the entire family dynamic. Landon was reportedly obsessed with building a fortress around his brood to keep the media's prying eyes at bay, all while simultaneously crafting a public brand that was built entirely on the image of wholesome family values. This constant juggling act created a thick, palpable tension between the demands of his high-visibility career and the sanctity of his private life. You can only imagine how incredibly confusing that duality must be for a young child trying to make sense of the world while growing up in the blinding glare of the spotlight. His daughter's reflections hint that these boundaries were often blurry at best, leading to painful moments of emotional disconnect right inside their own home. The emotional damage caused by this kind of high-pressure environment often goes unnoticed by the public, but the scars it leaves behind can be incredibly deep and profound. Landon's daughter has opened up about her rollercoaster of feelings, describing a mix of intense admiration and deep-seated frustration emotions that are all too common for kids raised by superstars. These clashing experiences paint a picture of a difficult balancing act where love and high expectations are constantly at war with unmet emotional needs. Grasping these subtle nuances is key to understanding why her recent bombshell disclosures shocked so many people. They completely shattered the illusion of his perfect public image. We also have to remember that Landon's approach to being a dad was heavily influenced by the rigid cultural rulebook of his time. The eras from the 1960s through the 1980s defined masculinity and fatherhood in a way that actively discouraged men from showing any emotional vulnerability whatsoever. For men belonging to his generation, the primary mission was simply to be the provider, ensuring financial stability and putting food on the table above all else. Displaying a softer side or admitting to personal struggles was rarely done, and it was practically unheard of for a rugged public figure like Landon. These old-school societal norms added yet another complicated hurdle to his genuine attempts to form a deep, meaningful connection with his children. The Michael Landon story is proof positive that massive financial success and worldwide fame are absolutely no guarantee of a happy, permanent family unit. The internal emotional struggles faced by industry titans often existed right alongside the incredible wealth and material luxury that provided for their comfortable lifestyles. His daughter does not shy away from the truth, sharing both the beautiful, joyful memories and the darker, more difficult chapters of her upbringing. It serves as a stark reminder that even the most glamorous celebrity families have a messy, complicated human dimension, just like everyone else. The narrative suggests that wealthy icons often use their status as a shield to hide their personal dysfunction, rather than actually doing the work to fix it. Tinseltown loves to sell us the fantasy of a flawless family life for its biggest stars, but the actual dynamics behind closed doors are always a far more complex reality. The raw, authentic voice of Landon's daughter reveals the unvarnished truth about celebrity fatherhood and effectively dismantles the long-standing myth of the perfect dad. This public deep dive into his life has established a fresh perspective on the heavy price of stardom, showing how it can wreak havoc on a star's private existence. Public figures in Landon's bracket have to deal with the crushing burden of their own legacy every single day. This pressure forces them to maintain a pristine, favourable public image, no matter what is actually going on behind the scenes. The obsession with controlling their own life story frequently drives these stars to bury their most challenging and painful memories deep underground. His daughter's revelations about her lived experience demonstrate exactly how famous figures construct false narratives to protect the family brand from the messy truth of their real lives. Landon truly dedicated himself to the role of a father because he desperately wanted to show his kids affection while instilling them with critical life lessons. However, the massive obstacles he faced during his legendary career help us to better comprehend the incredible work he produced as well as the genuine difficulties he struggled with in the real world. His daughter's candid and honest reflections pull us closer to her personal experience, exposing the unique complexities of coming of age in a world-famous family. This intense personal journey did not just shape how she views her legendary father, but also dictated the path she chose for her own future. Her specific journey growing up as the child of Michael Landon came with a set of golden opportunities, but also a collection of distinct personal challenges. Being a member of such a high-profile clan meant living with a constant level of attention and expectation that very few people can truly understand. Landon's daughter had to navigate this surreal reality while trying to carve out her own identity in the massive shadow of her father's legacy. Her life was a strange cocktail of privilege and pressure, where moments of pure joy were often mixed with feelings of being invisible or completely misunderstood. Walking this path has had a profound influence on how she interprets her father's life and the history of her entire family. She has spoken openly about the internal struggle to reconcile the public's perception of her dad with her own private, often conflicting memories. While the outside world saw nothing but an ideal father figure, her daily experience included contradictions that permanently shaped her emotional landscape. These kinds of conflicts are standard fare in families where fame casts a long shadow as children learn the hard way to balance public admiration with their own personal truths. Her brutal honesty sheds much-needed light on these internal conflicts, allowing the rest of us to recognise the messy complexity lurking behind the polished celebrity narratives. Her personal path also involved the hard work of coming to terms with the fact that her parents were imperfect human beings. She had to face the harsh realities of life that the glitter of fame often tried to obscure. Like so many children of Hollywood icons, she had to fight to find her own voice amidst the loud competing stories and heavy expectations. This process of self-discovery was absolutely essential for her to understand who she was beyond just being Michael Landon's daughter, helping her embrace both the blessings and the scars of her upbringing. This deep dive wasn't just about unpacking her past. It was about arming her with the tools she needed to construct a whole new future. Michael Landon's daughter has decided it is finally time to break her silence, stepping into the spotlight to fiercely reclaim the narrative that belongs to her. This road to recovery and self-empowerment demands that she speaks her truth, allowing her to move on while still meticulously protecting the colossal legacy her father left behind. By tearing down the walls and exposing her own vulnerabilities, she forges an intense bond with the audience, who now see her not just as the keeper of a famous name, but as a unique individual in her own right. Her insights really drive home the point that looking at events through the rearview mirror offers a clarity and perspective that you just cannot get when you are in the thick of it. She has managed to put some serious miles between herself and those turbulent experiences of the past. That emotional distance is exactly what allows her to look at her dad's complex character and their family dynamics with a fresh pair of eyes full of understanding and grace. She isn't sugarcoating anything. She lays out a three-dimensional portrait of the man, highlighting his golden moments right alongside his darker, more flawed traits. The wisdom she has gathered over the years gives her the kind of gravitas and credibility that makes you trust every word she says. She opens up about her own journey, shedding light on the very specific, often invisible struggles that plague children growing up in the shadow of massive celebrity icons. The artist pulls back the curtain on her constant war against the intrusion of privacy, detailing her desperate fight to carve out a normal existence and build real connections in a fake world. She is turning that pain into power, building a platform where others who have walked through similar fires can finally feel safe enough to voice their own emotions. Through her storytelling, we are reminded that even the most complicated family webs are spun with threads of genuine joy and intimate closeness. It serves as proof that deep familial love can and often does survive even the messiest and most chaotic of circumstances. The memories she unlocks provide the crucial context we need to really grasp the severity of her struggles, painting a vivid picture of the timeline of her life. To truly get where she is coming from, you have to be willing to look at the entire spectrum of her experiences, not just the highlight reel. Her narrative acts as a bridge connecting three distinct worlds, seamlessly weaving the ghosts of the past into the reality of the present day. It also blurs the lines between what was shown on the public stage and what happened behind closed doors, contrasting worldwide adoration with intimate private scrutiny. This project cracks the door open for honest conversations about what it really means to inherit a legacy, revealing the unvarnished truth about the lives of the rich and famous. Just as Michael Landon had to juggle the world's high expectations with his private life, his daughter now faces the Herculean task of spilling her truth without tarnishing the memory of the man she loved. Seeing how their paths cross and diverge gives us a much richer, deeper understanding of both of their lives. Let's talk about the media circus and the massive misconceptions that came with it. Michael Landon's entire existence was filtered through a rose-coloured lens because the media was absolutely obsessed with his squeaky clean, wholesome image. Back in his heyday, the press couldn't get enough of him, constantly praising his iconic television roles and those all-American family values he seemed to embody. Every interview, magazine cover and talk show appearance zeroed in on his undeniable charm, his work ethic and the heartwarming moral lessons his characters taught us every week. This relentless positive spin elevated him to near godlike status, practically cementing him as the ultimate ideal American father figure in the public imagination. However, that perfect portrait didn't leave much room for the messy, complicated reality bubbling just beneath the surface. Because the media was so fixated on his public hero persona, the darker, more difficult chapters of his life were either conveniently ignored or softened to fit the narrative. Any whispers about his health battles, personal demons or on-set clashes were systematically downplayed to keep his sterling reputation intact. This cherry-picking of facts helped maintain the myth of an untouchable, untarnished hero that everyone wanted to believe in. While you can understand why they did it given his massive popularity, it essentially meant the fans were never given the chance to see the real man behind the curtain. His daughter's bombshell revelations are finally challenging that one-sided story, introducing layers of nuance and truth that have been missing from the conversation for decades. Sure, every now and then the tabloids would try to dig up some dirt or stir up a controversy, but honestly, those attempts barely made a dent against the tidal wave of overwhelmingly positive worship he received from the mainstream press. For the most part, sensationalism was kept at bay, likely out of a deep-seated respect for the family-first brand Landon had built so effectively. As a result, the media world around him turned into a carefully curated gallery where only the approved, flattering stories were allowed on the walls. This controlled environment made it nearly impossible for any alternative viewpoints, especially from insiders who knew the truth, to break through or be taken seriously. Landon himself was notoriously protective of his family's privacy, always calculating exactly what he would and would not share with the public. That level of discretion severely limited what the media could access effectively, letting him write the script of his own life story for the world. It built a fortress that protected his carefully crafted image, but it came at a steep cost, the loss of genuine authenticity. His daughter's brave decision to speak out has finally bridged that gap, giving us all a rare, raw glimpse behind that polished Hollywood exterior. Her voice is forcing us to stop and reassess everything we thought we knew versus what was actually kept hidden in the shadows. Between the endless reruns, the tear-jerking tribute shows and the nostalgia-fueled programming, pop culture and media narratives cemented Landon's persona in stone. Watching his most beloved characters on loop kept his legacy alive, but it also trapped the public in a very narrow understanding of who the man actually was. It was the same public message echoing over and over again like a broken record. It really drove a massive wedge between the polished icon the world adored and the complex man his inner circle actually knew. Interestingly, her bombshell disclosures dropped right when society was shifting its perspective on celebrity culture and mental health awareness. Audiences in 2026 are much more willing to dig into the messy real-life struggles of the rich and famous, which basically forces us to completely flip the script on those fairy tale narratives we have been fed for decades. The statements coming from Landon's daughter really highlighted a cultural movement that prioritises raw authenticity over polite silence. Her reflections challenged everyone consuming celebrity news to look closer at how these stories are spun and whose voices actually get the mic. Instead of just running with sensational headlines, many media outlets actually took a step back to analyse his complex character rather than exploiting the family drama. This more nuanced approach paved the way for a conversation that was actually fair and balanced, honouring the massive television empire he built while still acknowledging the personal demons he battled behind closed doors. The way the press handled this story really helped bridge the gap between die-hard fans and critics, fostering a sense of empathy on both sides. Of course, the risk of getting things twisted remains high. We need to figure out how to hold public figures accountable without completely invading their personal space. By opening the door to her past, the daughter invited the world in, but that invitation came with a heavy dose of public scrutiny she could not escape. Airing family laundry, even for the right reasons, creates this permanent tension that hangs over every single part of the storytelling process. And as the conversation around Landon's life continues to evolve, it has inevitably started to impact how long-time viewers process their own nostalgia and their relationship with his on-screen legacy. Let's talk about that impact on the fans. For generations, Michael Landon was not just an actor. He was the ultimate beacon of kindness, grit, and heartwarming storytelling. The characters he played did not just entertain, they forged deep connections, crafting an image of rock-solid family values and unwavering morality. So when his daughter decided to speak her truth, it did not just make headlines, it triggered a wave of raw emotion and renewed interest, forcing millions of people to reconcile the saintly figure they knew with the private individual who existed when the cameras stopped rolling. Naturally, the fan base was split. A lot of people were genuinely shocked, feeling a bit rattled as their cosy narratives were invaded by darker realities. That discomfort is totally normal when new truths come along and crack the foundation of our favourite childhood memories. On the flip side, plenty of fans embraced the grit, feeling that these imperfections actually gave his legacy meaningful weight. By seeing his humanity, fans were able to connect with the man himself on a deeper level beyond the idealised father figures he played on TV. There was a huge outpouring of gratitude toward the daughter for choosing transparency over maintaining a glossy fake facade. Her revelations transformed blind admiration into genuine empathy and sparked necessary conversations about the reality of family life behind the fame. She essentially dismantled the wall between his superstar persona and his private experience, making Landon feel more human and relatable than ever before. Now his history feels richer and more three-dimensional. While his TV contributions are legendary, this broader view reminds us that no legacy is purely black and white. Viewers can still celebrate his massive career achievements, but also hold space for his personal struggles, creating a memory built on truth and compassion rather than blind perfection. The ripple effects of her speaking out are going to shape exactly how the next generation of viewers interprets Landon's place in history. Ultimately, though, the actual work he left behind will still be the primary lens through which he is judged. Understanding the emotional turmoil of his real life actually adds layers to the themes of redemption and hardship he was so obsessed with filming. This context does not ruin the show, it deepens the watch. It gives those classic storylines a much heavier, more substantial meaning. Social media became the town square for this entire saga, letting fans vent, debate and support each other as they process the shocking news. This online community carved out a space for thoughtful reflection, proving once again that when we talk openly, we can completely shift how society views its biggest stars. Admittedly, it was a bitter pill for some superfans to swallow, accepting that their idol was not the flawless hero they had put on a pedestal. It really highlights that psychological struggle we all have, trying to love someone's work while accepting that the person behind it might be complicated. Thanks to his daughter's bravery, Michael Landon evolved from a perfect myth into a flesh and blood human being, shifting into a real human story that hits harder because it is based on cold facts rather than idealised PR representations. As the dust settles and everyone wakes up to this new reality, we are seeing the start of a huge rethink on what it means to remember our heroes. It is about blending the celebration with the brutal truth. Let's reflect on moving forward. Leslie breaking her silence is not just gossip. It offers a profound shift in how we honour this beloved star. Her testimony invites us all to step back and look at the complete picture flaws and all of a man who influenced millions. This kind of transparency challenges us to stop worshipping idols and start engaging with the messy complexity of real life, even with the legends we love the most. It serves as a powerful reminder that a star's legacy isn't some statue frozen in time. It is a breathing, evolving narrative that changes depending on who is telling the story. Leslie's candid reflections force us to take off the rose-coloured glasses and look at Landon with a lot more compassion and understanding than before. It is not just about celebrating the Hollywood icon we saw on TV. It is about acknowledging the very real demons he was battling when the cameras stopped rolling. When we finally accept that a person can be incredibly talented and deeply flawed at the same time, we stop putting these celebrities on impossible pedestals they were never meant to stand on. That kind of honesty builds real empathy, reminding every single fan out there that even the biggest stars carry heavy baggage that the public never gets to see. His daughter's perspective blows the door wide open for some much-needed conversations about the toxic mix of fame, family dynamics and emotional health in Hollywood. It really challenges the way we consume celebrity culture, forcing us to ask ourselves what kind of personal toll these stars pay for their massive public success. As we move deeper into 2026 and get smarter about mental health, her voice adds a crucial layer of honesty and humanity to the conversation that was missing for decades. This level of transparency is going to completely reshape how Michael Landon is remembered in the history books, moving beyond just the character to the man himself. People are going to be far more interested in diving into the complexity of his entire life story rather than just obsessing over his ratings or his professional accolades. His life story actually gains so much more depth and value when we include these details, showing us the full scope of his impact alongside his very human traits. For many families and longtime fans, there is a sense of genuine healing that comes from finally hearing the raw, unvarnished truth after all these years. It allows everyone to let go of that perfect, idealised image they held onto and replace it with a more genuine, gritty memory of who he actually was. Her bravery paves the way for other public figures to drop the act and share their real experiences, creating richer stories that go way beyond the superficial tabloids. We all loved Michael Landon for those heartwarming roles he played on screen, but his real life had hidden corners and shadows that Leslie has finally shined a light on. It is time we recognise the flesh and blood human behind the legend, because it is possible to respect his massive legacy while also acknowledging his complete complicated identity. Leslie has officially opened a brand new chapter in how we understand her father, writing a story that is filled with brutal honesty, deep complexity, and a whole lot of heart. Her courage in speaking out completely reshapes his legacy, serving as a stark reminder that every Hollywood story has multiple sides that the cameras don't catch. If you found this deep dive into the truth behind the fame compelling, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more revealing stories about your favourite stars. And don't go anywhere, because you are going to want to stick around for the next shocking story waiting for you right there on your screen.